In today's daily news, we zoom in on the near crisis seeming situation that has been happening over the past 24 hours as it relates to passengers who have been taken off the Norwegian Escape, which ran aground in Puerto Plata, up on attempting to leave that pier on March 15th. Now, the backstory to this is that the tide had receded, and in an attempt to navigate out of that area, the vessel moved a bit more to the right, should I say? Well, it moved out of the course that was charted, and a sudden gust of wind, maybe about 13 knots, blew over that area, and it swerved off course, hitting into a mound in the water. So there are mounds. So the basically the ship needs a certain draft. It needs a certain depth of water, and because the tide was low and there is a certain draft that it needs. Now, this article was very interesting. This quote actually from one of the passengers who is a public relations strategist from Washington, D.C. He had a scheduled flight to return home on Saturday, and neither his insurance provider nor the cruise line representatives reached out by phone that he reached out to by phone had answers. Now, this opens us up to a whole nother story about choosing your insurance providers. But if you should really look at it as the consumer, are all insurance providers created equal? And I know this is going to start a whole new debate, but I am also a consumer. And so we have to straddle the fence and look at everything as it should be looked at. He says, as he continued, he is awaiting a call back from the manager on Friday. Now, the Washington Post continues. The cruise company did not respond to questions from the Washington Post about reported confusion at the airport in Puerto Plata or arrangements of passengers, especially if they had not booked flights through Norwegian once they returned to Orlando. Another Twitter user said, my cruise just dumped 2,090 people at an airport in the Dominican Republic with absolutely no direction. Wow. She goes on to say verbal fights are happening, wow, and no one knows what to do. Then, of course, the sarcasm goes in. Thank you, Norwegian Cruise, or Cruise Norwegian, and hashtag Norwegian Escape. And it goes on and on and on. So, what can I say? Just sharing the news as it breaks, because it's important to know all that happens in the world of travel. We'll keep following this story, and as it evolves and is newsworthy, we will share it with you. The sudden gust of wind caused it to veer to the side of taking it off course, and at that same instant, a strong gust of wind caused that total movement, which caused the ship to run aground. So in essence, this caused the crew and the team of the Escape to terminate the cruise and to begin informing the passengers that the ship would be going no further. That's the end of that cruise. So in essence, the good news was that everyone was offered a full refund as well as a future cruise credit. As a footnote to all this, The update here states that the ship left Puerto Plata on Friday afternoon once all the passengers had disembarked. Norwegian said in a statement that the next cruise, scheduled to leave on Saturday, was cancelled so that the necessary repairs can be done. A follow-up tweet by passengers still in Puerto Plata said, "Well, there goes our ship. They kicked us all off this morning. We're just stuck here, hanging with our luggage in a Dominican Republic port, waiting hours for our charter flights." And they're not happy. So a statement from Norwegian made it seem very, very clear-cut. Passengers would begin disembarking at a particular time, and over the next 2 days, they would have them disembarked, transferred to the airport, flown back to various places, whether to their home airport or back to the pier where those who were parked would be able to retrieve their vehicles and continue on their way. However, on Twitter this morning, I came across quite a few persons being very, very upset. And this, of course, drew my attention. 15 hours ago, one person posted that the McDonald's in Puerto Plata was totally overwhelmed with orders, and so they had to leave and go to the airport for upcoming flights, which have subsequently been cancelled. So of course, by this I thought, this is newsworthy, this is something to follow. And so I followed that thread, and the conversation along with photos became clear that there was a pile-up, a bottleneck at the airport, because the Puerto Plata airport, even though I do not know it, but the tale and the images tell a story of it not being accustomed to the magnitude of persons there, and it's overwhelmed and flights are being cancelled as well. So of course I decided to follow the thread a little more, as any good detective, researcher, travel blogger, curious cruiser would do, and I'm all of the above, can I just tell you? And so I followed the thread to Hannah Sampson, and she made it clear that she would be taking info from persons who wanted to share, and so every thread leads somewhere, and so it led me to the story that Anna has submitted to the Washington Post. And in effect, it speaks of the situation from the passenger's viewpoint. And so it starts by saying, first, the massive cruise ship ran aground in the Dominican Republic on Monday afternoon. The ship's hull had sustained minor damage after it made contact with the channel bed during its departure from Puerto Plata. And this was Norwegian's statement according to this article. Then, for days after the Norwegian Escape was refloated early Tuesday morning, passengers waited on board as it sat in port and wondered when they would be allowed to leave. Thursday night, they got confirmation. Everyone still on the 1,069-foot-long ship would disembark the next day, starting at 4:30 a.m. Now, this is where things get interesting. Long lines for coronavirus tests followed. By Friday morning, social media posts showed hundreds of people standing in line at the Puerto Plata airport after being shuttled from the vessel, waiting for charter flights throughout the day. So Norwegian had put that in place. That is my assumption. Another passenger posted video from the port and said she was waiting there. before her flight. So one of the tweets that I saw suggested that once persons were disembarked from the vessel, they were at the port for extended periods waiting to be shuttled to the airport. The statement here says, they literally dumped us off the ship with no further assistance after that. And obviously, yeah, this was a quote from Twitter. She said, it is a freaking madhouse at the airport. 2,000 Norwegian passengers trying to get back to the US from DR is one of the tweets that the Washington Post chose to highlight. The ship left Port Canaveral. This is a Norwegian Escape, and Port Canaveral is east of Orlando on March 12, with stops planned in Puerto Plata, St. Thomas, Tortola, and the Bahamas. It was supposed to return to Florida on Saturday. Instead, Norwegian canceled the remainder of the voyage and chartered flights, just as I suspected, to take persons to Orlando, then take them to Orlando. The first of those persons left on Wednesday, the rest on Thursday and Friday. It continues to say, though, that in emails and on social media, passengers said there were no representatives from the cruise company at the airport to help travelers who were being flown to Orlando. Late Friday, the situation got worse for some passengers who remained in the Dominican Republic, according to social media posts and messages to the Washington Post. Tony Hoffman, 37, of St. Augustine, Florida, said in a message that she was supposed to fly out at 8 p.m. on Friday, but after standing in line for 2 hours, she learned that there was a problem and she would be on a flight Saturday morning around 8:30 p.m. So that would be Saturday evening. She said she had just arrived at a hotel and was hoping to find food because her group's last meal was breakfast on the ship. She estimated that several hundred people were in a similar situation. Some who had already made it to Florida said they were paying out of pocket for hotel stays until their previously scheduled trip home. So they were paying out of pocket for hotel stays until their previously scheduled trip home. Okay. With no word from Norwegian on reimbursement. And I mean, just to comment on this, it takes time. So, and that's why we always tell our clients, travel protection, travel protection, travel protection. Because in the middle of an ongoing crisis, you are not going to have instant responses on a case by case. And these matters take time. You will have to spend out of pocket if you do not have insurance. Keep your receipts, submit them, and they will go through the process. Generally, there is an individual or a committee that makes a decision on how to go forward. So it's not instant, it's not clockwork. And just for the knowledge of the public, even as travel designers prepare and provide you with the service of selling your trip, it's a process. We may cause it to seem seamless, but there's a whole lot that happens in the background, and I can only imagine the flurry of activity that must be going on now in the background as Norwegian tries to put all of this into context and work out a amicable solution for this situation.